All right, everyone, get ready. Because today we're going deep into a case that's both heartbreaking and, honestly, a real head-scratcher. The Alter family murders.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that just sticks with you.
It really is.
Just a normal day in a peaceful neighborhood in Miramar, Florida, April 30th, 1997.
Like, you wake up, have your coffee, and bam, this horrific crime scene just unfolds, shakes the whole community.
And it's not just a family found murdered, which is tragic enough on its own.
Right.
This is Marie Carmel Alter, her husband George, two little girls, Samantha, only 2 years old, and baby Sabrina, just 6 weeks old. And even Marie Carmel's mother, Teresa Laverne, visiting from Haiti.
A whole family gone.
It's devastating.
And the violence, it was extreme, wasn't it? Like, beyond what you'd expect.
Absolutely. The reports, the combination of blunt force trauma and gunshots,
Yeah.
it points to this rage, this anger that goes way beyond a typical robbery or even a personal fight.
Right.
This was personal, like a message was being sent.
And speaking of messages, there's that cryptic note, right? And it's not just like left on the counter or something. This is scrawled on the wall between the bodies of those two little girls.
Between the children, yeah.
I want my 100,000 drug money. They stole my drugs. It's chilling.
It's just, who does that?
I know.
That note, right from the start, raises so many questions.
Like red flags everywhere.
The placement, it's like it's staged, deliberately provocative.
Yeah.
And the language, the way it's written, does that sound like someone involved in big-time drug dealing? The grammar, the phrasing?
Yeah, you'd think they'd be a little more, I don't know, articulate.
It feels almost like someone trying to sound less educated.
Oh, interesting.
Like they're trying to mislead the investigators.
Throw them off the scent.
Exactly.
So right away, we're dealing with a crime scene that's meant to confuse.
Yeah.
You find baby Sabrina first, right there in her bassinet.
Awful.
Then Teresa nearby.
Mm.
And then you find Marie Carmel in another room, also brutally murdered. But where's 2-year-old Samantha?
That's the thing. She wasn't immediately found.
Oh, wow.
They discovered her later, hidden between two couches.
Hidden.
Like someone had deliberately concealed her.
It's like another layer of staging almost.
It adds to the whole feeling that something's not right, that things aren't what they seem.
Okay, so we've got a brutal staged crime scene, a cryptic, maybe even fake note, and a hidden child.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
Naturally, the husband, George Alter, becomes a suspect.
It's the usual starting point.
He was at work during the estimated time of the murders, though, so it seems like he has an alibi.
He does, at least on the surface.
But then there's this 7:09 a.m. phone call.
Ah, yes, the phone call.
That's where the timeline gets really, really interesting.
It does.
A relative in Maryland gets a call from the Alter house at 7:09 a.m.
Right.
The woman on the call says she's Marie Carmel and even mentions baby Sabrina.
That little detail, it's crucial.
So if this call's real, it throws George's alibi out the window, right?
It definitely complicates things.
Wait, so you're telling me one phone call could unravel a whole alibi?
It has the potential to.
Wow.
But we have to remember, the relative who received the call, she wasn't completely sure it was actually Marie Carmel's voice.
Right.
This was 1997, long before cell phones were everywhere and voice recognition technology was sophisticated.
Yeah, good point.
It was hard to confirm who was actually on the other end of the line.
So we're left with this huge question mark.
Hanging over everything.
Was that actually Marie Carmel on the phone, or was it someone pretending to be her?
And if it was someone else, why? What was their goal?
Exactly. And that leads to the biggest question in this whole deep dive.
Part of the matter.
Was George Alter a grieving husband who lost his entire family in a horrific act? Or was he a killer trying to cover his tracks?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
So let's dig into the evidence.
Let's see what we can uncover.
George initially cooperated with the investigation, even went through an 8-hour interrogation.
He did.
But then he got a lawyer and invoked his right to silence.
That's where things take a turn.
Okay, that's kind of suspicious, right?
It definitely raises eyebrows.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there.
Oh.
Shortly after, he moves out of state, remarries a woman he was with the night before the murders, and basically disappears from the public eye.
Wow. Okay, on the surface, that does seem pretty incriminating.
It's hard to ignore those actions.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful.
Right, we can't jump to conclusions.
They have to consider all the possibilities, look at everything with a critical eye.
You're right.
Remember that strange note? Investigators compared it to George's handwriting.
Oh, right, what'd they find? Did it match?
That's where things get even murkier.
How so?
The first analysis, It was inconclusive.
So they couldn't say for sure.
They couldn't definitively say it was his, but they also couldn't rule him out.
Okay, that's not very helpful.
It added to the confusion for sure.
And then what?
Well, there was a second analysis done by a private examiner this time. And that analysis suggested that the writing probably wasn't George's after all.
So was this note a deliberate attempt to mislead the investigation, a red herring?
It's a very real possibility.
But if it was, who was it meant to protect?
That's the question, isn't it?
And that leads us to another interesting thing about the Alter family murders.
What's that?
The lack of any signs of a typical robbery.
Yeah, that's the key detail.
What do you mean?
The house, it was tidy. There was no ransacking. Drawers weren't pulled out. Valuables were left untouched. There was even a locked door in the office that hadn't been forced open.
So it doesn't fit the usual pattern of a robbery?
Not really. And not even a drug deal gone wrong like that note tries to suggest.
So you're saying the killer, whoever they were, wanted everyone to think it was a robbery, even though the evidence doesn't really support that.
That's the impression we get.
But why? What were they trying so hard to hide?
That's the million-dollar question.
Well, luckily for us, the Alter case didn't stay cold forever.
No, thank goodness.
10 years after the murders, this really determined detective named Danny Smith decided to take another look at the case.
Danny Smith, he was dedicated.
Yeah, he was really struck by how meticulously staged the whole crime scene seemed.
He saw through the facade.
He had this theory that the note, that message scrawled between those two little girls,
Yeah.
he didn't think it was meant for the family at all.
It's a chilling thought.
He saw it as a message directly aimed at the investigators.
A way to manipulate them.
A deliberate attempt to lead them away from the real culprit.
That's what he believed.
So if the note wasn't meant to protect George, then who was it meant to protect?
That's what we'll be exploring as we continue our deep dive into the Alter family murders.
It's wild, right? Like, you have no physical evidence pointing to a specific person, but that doesn't mean they're innocent.
Right, it just makes the puzzle harder to solve.
Exactly. Like, imagine trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle, but some pieces are missing, and some might even be from a completely different puzzle. That's a good analogy. It gets really hard to see the full picture then.
For sure.
So we have these things George did after the murders, the sudden move, remarrying, that raised suspicions, but that doesn't automatically make him a murderer.
Right. We can't just assume guilt because of actions that, well, they could be interpreted in different ways.
Like maybe he moved because he couldn't stand to stay in that house, in that town, surrounded by all those memories.
Yeah, grief can manifest in all sorts of ways.
Exactly. Everyone handles trauma differently.
Absolutely.
So if we step back from focusing on George for a second, who else might have benefited from this horrible crime?
That's the question, isn't it?
Could there be some hidden motive, a secret vendetta that we haven't even considered yet?
It's possible. And that's where the real detective work comes in.
You got to dig deeper, go beyond the surface, right?
Exactly. You have to explore every possible angle.
We keep coming back to that note, the drug money, stolen drugs. What if it's all a misdirection, a red herring to pull the investigation away from the real motive?
It's a strong possibility.
You know, it's interesting you say that because thinking about the Alter family, they had just immigrated from Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
Could there be something in their past, some connection back home that might shed some light on a different motive altogether?
It's definitely a possibility worth considering.
I mean, conflicts can follow people across borders even.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about it, family feuds, political rivalries, even something like a land dispute.
Any of those could have followed the Alters to Florida.
And we can't forget about the time period, 1997, pre-social media, pre-widespread internet.
It's a completely different world from how we investigate things today.
It's not like now where investigators can just, retrace digital footprints or uncover hidden online connections.
Right. It makes digging into their lives, their relationships, so much harder.
It's a whole different ballgame.
The Alter case, it really shows the challenges of investigating a crime in a pre-digital age.
Yeah, you have to rely on those traditional methods like witness interviews, forensic analysis.
Painstakingly piecing together a timeline.
It's a much slower process, much more laborious.
It really is.
And sometimes those methods just hit a wall.
Frustrating. Right.
Like, what about that 7:09 a.m. phone call? Was it really Marie Carmel, or was it someone pretending to be her?
Still unanswered.
And if it was someone else, how do they even know about baby Sabrina? She was only 6 weeks old.
That phone call, it's such a weird clue, so
It
tantalizing.
really is.
If it was an impersonator, it means someone knew this family, their routines, and was actively trying to mess with the investigation.
To throw everyone off.
Exactly.
But who would have the motive and the opportunity to do that?
It's the million-dollar question.
Maybe it was someone close to them, someone in their community in Florida.
Possibly.
A business deal gone bad, a jealous neighbor, a scorned lover. I mean, the possibilities seem endless.
What's so important to remember is that even the smallest details can be important in a case like this.
You never know what might be the key.
A seemingly unrelated event, a random comment, a forgotten memory. Any of those could unlock the truth behind the Alter murders.
It's like a domino effect. You tip over one tiny domino and it sets off this whole chain reaction.
Precisely.
And that's why we're talking about this case with you, our listeners.
Bringing you in.
You never know, someone out there might have that one piece of information, a hunch, a memory, that could break this case wide open.
A fresh perspective is so valuable.
Exactly. We need your help to find that missing piece of the puzzle.
Sometimes it's the outsider, the one who's not as close to the case, who can see the connections that everyone else has missed.
They can see the forest for the trees.
And remember, no piece of information is too small, too insignificant.
Even if you think it doesn't matter.
Let the authorities decide, It's always better to share it and have it be irrelevant than to keep something to yourself that could be crucial.
So we're urging anyone who might know anything at all about the Alter family murders to come forward.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
You can remain completely anonymous.
And there's even a reward for information that leads to an arrest.
The Broward Crime Stoppers line is 954-493-8477.
That's 954-493-TIP-PS.
Your call, it could finally bring justice for Marie Carmel, George, Samantha, Sabrina, and Teresa.
They deserve justice.
And their families deserve answers.
Absolutely.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener? It means you could be the one to help solve this case.
You could hold the key.
Maybe you were living in Miramar back in 1997 and you remember something unusual, something that seemed out of place back then.
Anything at all.
Maybe you overheard a conversation, saw a suspicious car, or knew someone who had some connection to the Alter family.
This is worth thinking back.
Or maybe you've learned something since then, a piece of information that didn't seem important at the time, but now, knowing what we know about this case could be vital.
It happens all the time.
Don't dismiss those memories, those hunches.
They could be important.
You might just hold the key to unlocking the truth behind the Alter family murders.
This case has haunted investigators for over 2 decades.
It's a story of just unimaginable brutality, a family torn apart, and a community left with so many questions.
That's a tragedy.
But it's not over yet.
There's still hope.
There's still a chance to bring those responsible to justice, to shed light on the darkness that consumed the Alter family on that awful day.
And that chance, it lies in the hands of those who know something, who hold a piece of the puzzle, no matter how small.
The Alter family and the Miramar community, they deserve closure.
They do.
And we believe that someone out there has the information that can help us find it.
The question is, will they come forward?
We'll be back after a quick.
So we spent all this time digging into the crime scene, the timeline, the suspects, the dead ends.
Yeah, it feels like every answer we get just leads to more questions.
Exactly. That's what makes this case so puzzling.
It's not just about finding out who did it. It's about understanding the why, the how.
The whole story.
The whole tangled web of events and motivations that led to such a horrible act. It's like peeling back layers of an onion, You think you're getting somewhere, but there's always another layer underneath.
A never-ending mystery.
We keep coming back to George, the husband, and how his actions after the murders were suspicious.
Right, but what if we've been looking at this the wrong way the whole time?
What if we've been going down the wrong path?
That's the thing with cold cases, right? They keep you up at night wondering if the assumptions you've made, the stories you've built in your head, are all based on incomplete information, or, even worse, your own biases.
I mean, that note, I want my 100,000 drug money, they stole my drugs. It feels almost too obvious, like a bad movie script.
Like it's trying too hard.
What if it's a total fabrication, a smokescreen, to hide a much more personal, much darker motive?
What if this wasn't about drugs or money at all?
What if it was something way more sinister?
A family secret, a long-held grudge, a crime of passion that had nothing to do with money.
It's chilling to think about, but what if someone wanted to punish the Alter family for something from their past?
Remember, they had just moved to Florida. From Haiti, they were starting a new life.
But maybe they brought something with them, something someone wanted to bury for good.
A secret that someone was willing to kill for.
So here we are, at the end of our deep dive, and I have to ask, do you think we're any closer to understanding what happened to the Alter family?
I think we've uncovered just how complicated this case really is.
We've explored so many angles.
We've examined the evidence, the contradictions, the unanswered questions that make this case such a mystery.
It's frustrating, but it's also fascinating.
It is, and while we can't give definitive answers, we can give you, the listener, the information you need to draw your own conclusions.
And maybe, just maybe, someone listening right now has a piece of the puzzle, something that seems small but could be crucial to solving this case.
Any detail, no matter how insignificant it might seem, could be the key.
So if you have any information at all, even if you think it's not important, please contact Broward Crime Stoppers.
Their number is 954-493-8477. That's 954-493-TPSEP. That's 954-493-TPSES.
You can stay anonymous. Your call could finally bring justice for Marie Carmel, George, Samantha, Sabrina, and Teresa.
Their families deserve answers, and the people responsible need to be held accountable.
We started this deep dive with a question. Was George a grieving husband, or was he a clever killer?
We've gone over the possibilities, looked at the evidence.
And now it's up to you to decide.
What do you think happened? Was it George, or could there be another explanation?
Could there be another suspect out there, someone we haven't even considered?
The other family murders, they force us to think differently, to question everything we think we know.
And to accept that sometimes the truth is more complicated and disturbing than we could ever imagine.
We might never know for sure what happened on that terrible day in April 1997, but we can't forget about the victims.
They deserve justice, and their story deserves to be told.
The Alter family murders are a reminder that even in seemingly safe and peaceful communities, darkness can exist.
And evil can touch the lives of innocent people.
We hope that this deep dive has not only been informative, but has also made you think, made you curious.
And maybe even inspired you to help bring some closure to this haunting case.
If you know anything at all, that could help bring justice to the Alter family, please contact the authorities.
Every tip, every detail, no matter how small, could be the missing piece that finally solves this puzzle.
This case needs to be solved.
And the Alter family deserves peace.